Welcome to the podcast, which is all about the world of direct response. Are we on the air? I'm your host, Sean Wilsey, and for over 30 years, I've hosted shows on cable shopping networks, and now I want to be your guide into this world as we look at the ever-changing nature of the industries. And we're going to get back and continue chatting with Bob Circosta in just a moment. Before I continue with Bob, and I wasn't even sure I was going to bring this up, because the QVC HSN yearly numbers have come out, and I wasn't even going to go over it because it's just rinse repeat of the topic that we've done 100 times already. But well, what the heck? And actually, there is some new news there. They did release their yearly results covering 24, and they were terrible. So again, I'm not even going to go into all of it. It's just everything was down. There really wasn't anything upbeat in the entire report. Revenue declined 6% in the fourth quarter. Minutes viewed declined 4%. They can measure these things, by the way, even though, ratings are not something that's generally released. They can track the amount that people are viewing. And again, they can blame the election and that and this and that. There's always excuses. Always excuses. Let's see. The margin did expand. They expanded that mainly through some cost-cutting things that they did. Yeah, I'm scrolling. Is there anything good here? It's really, that's about it. I mean, it's all negative. All the categories pretty much were down. It's just, there's nothing good here. Again, you can blame cord cutting. You can blame a million things. So again, what's the future hold? Well, that is the only reason why I'm really even bringing this up, because literally as of the day that this episode of the show is being dropped, which is March 18th, they announced the appointment of a new person to a new title, President and Chief Growth Officer. On paper, I guess I kind of understand what that means, but then when you read it, it does make sense. This is the guy who will be Alex Wellen, by the way, is his name. He's bringing over 20 years of experience in digital media, product innovation, and driving impactful growth strategies. This is from the press release. And so he will lead the QVC's group across U.S. social selling, streaming, digital, new business development, and platform distribution. So it sounds like you'll have nothing really to do with an on-air show as we're used to seeing it, but it does show their focus on expanding into digital media and into streaming and the other forms that people are shopping. Now, I'm always last to the party guy. I did not even know that this app was a thing, since we're talking about streaming, until literally about 2 days ago. Whatnot. Whatnot is an app that you can download to your devices, and it's live streamers. It's kind of like what I used to, I talked about maybe 2 years ago on Facebook. There were a lot of people doing Facebook live selling, and Facebook has kind of forced those off the air, if you will. This is an app of people live streaming from their home or their business, whatever, selling whatever. Now, you tell it what you're interested in. For instance, I told I'm interested in men's fashion, men's vintage clothing, jewelry, vintage and antique jewelry, coins and money, coins and bullion, home and garden, other men's fashion, watches, obviously. And it shows you live streamers. Here's one right now.
But if you want it right now, $20. 22 is in. Okay, Swin said he wants it. Okay, 22 is in.
And this guy has 27 people watching his live stream. It's nothing fancy, and he's selling his vintage T-shirts. Here's another one, 55 people watching. Some of these get into the hundreds of people that are watching. In fact, here is a coin show right now, 114 people watching. So if I'm in the mood to shop for men's fashion, boom, here's where I'm going to go. Now, QVC never catered to that market, so maybe bad example, but let's say you're a woman and you want to shop for jewelry. I'm telling you right now, on this app, you could watch people live streaming, selling jewelry, new and old product. It's not just all vintage, anytime you want to. So if QVC, and this is where I think Shop HQ might run into trouble because, they're trying to change this market too. There's already people there. It's just a matter of idiots like me not knowing that they're there. But no, these people are already there, already doing it, and so that's the battle that QVC is going to have. They're playing catch-up to people that are already doing this. So We'll see what happens. But again, just in summation, because we want to get back to Bob. There's nothing good in QVC's yearly reports, so that's the end of that topic. I would much rather get back to talking to Bob Circosta because we have, and if you haven't listened to the last episode, go back and listen to that one first before you finish this one, because you're going to want to play catch up, because we've talked about the late 70s all through the 80s. We've chatted about the history of HSN, with HSN moving, for those that don't know, they're closing the campus this summer, moving it all to Pennsylvania, where QVC is based, and they're all under the parent company now. And so we've gone through the history of HSN and gotten us all up through the 1980s. Now, at some point in the 90s, because you already alluded to this, you were Home Shopping Club, you were HSN, Home Shopping Network, back to HSN. I mean, back and forth with the main network. We'll just refer to it. At some point, it was almost like overnight, a switch was flipped, and gone was the host at the desk. Gone was, I feel, some of that interaction, and it's like, okay, now I have, because I teased Dan Dennis about this. I put on the show one day, and Dan Dennis was sitting handling what I called these lovely Italian porcelain pots, and I could tell he was miserable doing this, but it was like the network went in this different direction overnight. What was going on in the 90s?
Well, we sold the network to John Malone, created Liberty Media, which initially was set up as an acquisition company to acquire different properties. And they acquired HSN. And so some of the people that were brought in had a change of their vision, and they wanted things done this way, that way, which were a lot different than before. And that's probably what you're alluding to.
Yeah.
You know, what you're seeing at that point. And then we tried to get back, it's tough to get the horse back in the barn, if you know what I mean. But we tried. We tried.
No,
90s were kind of turbulent.
Well, and I think, too, just considering that era, its marketing has to evolve. A commercial that you ran in the 1970s is not going to play in the 1990s, is not going to play today. The way you advertise products, the way you market products, it has to evolve. And I think what was awesome for the 80s and worked so well to the 1990s customer, who was more used to, by then, the QVC way of doing things, that it did have to evolve a little bit, and eventually HSN found its footing again. And as I've said on this podcast many times, I think today HSN's doing QVC better than QVC is doing QVC. No, I really do. It's just
well, QVC went on the air in 1986.
Yeah,
and they, in fact, I remember the day. Bless his heart, rest in peace, Joe Siegel, who created QVC. He came down to HSN's property before QVC went on the air, and he met with Roy and Bud, myself. There were two other people in the room, and he wanted to know, why do you do this way? Why do you do that way? He was very inquisitive, and the question he was really asking was, how can I make this better?
Sure.
And that's what he did.
Yeah.
Just a marvelous guy. And he and his son Marv is a mutual friend of ours, a great guy. And he made it better. He created the standard of the way it was done and the way it continues to be done. So, but the 90s were tough. In the late 80s, at one time I counted it, there were 28 other companies trying to do home shopping. 28.
Wow.
Yeah, at the same time. The challenge was they didn't have the distribution.
Right.
They may have put on a great production or a great show, but they didn't have, as we refer to them, as eyeballs.
Yeah.
They didn't have the distribution. So nobody saw them. Well, everybody saw us because we locked up all the cable distribution. We had the UHF distribution that we owned. So you almost had to watch us. You had no choice. In fact, one time, J.C. Penney, believe it or not, in the 80s, J.C. Penney wanted to start a shopping network, and they did. They started one. out in California, and in fact, I flew out there because we had some discussions.
No kidding.
And oh yeah, and I remember
Oh.
seeing the sound stages. They were on the sound stages at I don't know if it was Paramount or a place like that, and they were. But no, and they had a great process in place. You could go to any J.C. Penney store and pick up the product or reject it. I mean, what a great process.
Oh.
But nobody saw the show. They
Yeah.
didn't have any viewers. And so you had to have the viewers, and Bud and Roy realized that at the beginning, and that's why they did the contracts for 10 years. And then when the contracts expired, that had a lot to do with the change that you referred to earlier.
Most people are not even remembering the fact that, gosh, in the 1980s, cable television was a rare commodity in some cities.
Sure.
I always found it ironic that in Minneapolis, which was the home to Cable Value Network, there were many homes that didn't even have cable, so weren't even able to get the network, which was broadcasting in their own backyard.
You're right.
Tell me about some of the famous people that have walked through those doors at that iconic building in St.
Oh
Pete.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. I mean, you name a celebrity, they have come in. I remember the first celebrity that we had was the late Farrah Fawcett.
Really?
Yes, I'll tell you a quick story. Now this is 1980, I want to say 86 or something like that. When we first had celebrities, all they did was sit next to the host. They didn't have a product or anything like that. They just sat there because we wanted people that were channel surfing to stop and say, "Oh, I know who that is. What is going on here? What is this program?" And people would stop and watch. So it didn't take long until the celebrities figured out, wait a minute, if I have a product or whatever, would that be a little bit different? So Farrah Fawcett was the first, and she was just a sweetheart, just a sweetheart. However, she was at the height of her popularity with Charlie's Angels. And I remember meeting with her in the green room right before the show. We were to go on. I was the host, she was the guest. And she looked at me and she said, "I hope no one sees me doing this." And I said, okay, you hope no one says. That's motivational.
Yeah, really.
What do you mean? She said, "Well, I'm doing this for a friend." The vendor of the product that she had was a friend of hers and was doing it as a favor. So we went out and we did the show, and she was wildly successful, and she could not wait to get back on. And she did a great job. And here's another quick side story. I mean, I could go on forever, but so one day in between shows, there was a stairwell in the building where you would open a door and the stairs would go all the way up and then the door would close. In fact, it's still there. I mean, it's right on the property. And she was so tired that she went in that stairwell and she fell asleep. And the door locked behind her. Nobody knew where she was.
No.
Oh, yeah. So you can imagine the panic that was going through. And that was the reason that we came up with green rooms. That was the reason we created, because Bud Roy said, "Don't lose track of these people."
Yeah, exactly.
And so we created green rooms at that point, but there were no green rooms before that. She changed clothes in a restroom in the building that had a rack in front of the door with a blanket over it, and to give her privacy. So I mean,
here's a woman that's
the
used.
more I hear these stories, I'm thinking, how in the heck did this happen?
Exactly. Woman is used to very lavish dressing rooms in Hollywood, I'm
yeah.
sure, and here she is in Florida, and she's changing in a ladies' room. Oh my God!
But we had Farrah Fawcett, Phyllis Diller,
Yeah.
came in quite a bit. As a matter of fact, Phyllis Diller, who was known to talk about her own plastic surgeries,
Yeah.
that was part of her shtick, but it was real. She had them all. She sold face cream.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
people say, well, it was called
Yeah.
Creme de la Vie.
Yeah.
And people said, well, how could Phyllis Diller sell? She really positioned it beautifully. She said, if I would have known about this face cream, I would not have needed all the plastic surgery.
Boy, that's smart.
And so, yeah. So that was great. So she came in. We had, all the sports figures, the entertainment. It was just one right after another would come in. And just great people. Some were somewhere a little difficult
Of
to,
course, of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
one came on with the watch collection,
Yes.
and I asked he'll go nameless. I asked him on the air. I said, "What were you thinking of when you designed this watch?" And he looked at me and he said, I don't know. I don't even wear a watch."
Oh,
I
jeez.
said, "Okay." Well, I looked down the phone lines and they
Yeah,
all
of
went blank.
course. Oh
Yeah, of course.
no.
So, I mean, there were moment after moment, but
Oh.
we had a lot of celebrities, and they still have celebrities, you know.
Yeah. So we've talked about HSN 1 and 2 and Spree and all of these. Wasn't there for a while a Spanish language network?
Yes, yeah.
Really?
Espanol. It was Espanol, and I forget exactly what it was called. It was right down the hall
Right.
from our regular studios, and and it was all Spanish at that time, and did very, very well. I don't even know why it ended. I have no idea, but
Yeah.
it finally ended. But yeah, it did very, very well, and everything they would use a lot of the same product,
Right.
so the product would come from our inventory, but it was all, and I don't know if they did it in conjunction with Univision or Telemundo.
Hmm.
I believe it was one of those stations where it was a joint effort with them as well. And it did very well because, you know, the Spanish speaking market constantly growing to this day,
Yeah.
constantly growing. So it was a nicely done project. A lot
I,
of wonderful people. And then when someone on the Spanish station, if they happen to speak English, they would come over and they would do some of our shows too, depending on the product.
One of the hosts that we had briefly at Shop NBC, a guy by the name of Leo Barojo, I thought had been down there, and so that's what made me think. Oh, wait a second! I think it was a Spanish language network for a while.
Yeah, it could have been, could have been. It was kept separate. I would say 90% of the time it was kept a separate operation. That's why I tend to believe it was one of the Telemundo or Univision
Okay.
joint businesses. But yeah, it did very, very well. And we started at one time, we started an infomercial network.
Oh, I wasn't aware of
And
that.
yeah, yeah, where we were just going to do infomercials 24/7 up on the satellite.
Yeah.
And I did a fashion show with Terry Toner. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, who still
yes.
does shows on the air. She's a guest. But Terry and I did a fashion show. Now, God bless Terry. She did all the work because I wasn't allowed to talk about women's fashions on the air at
Yeah.
that time. In fact, I did one day, and I gave a whole new meaning to the word espadrille. And it was, you know, I told the cameraman to put the camera in the shoe to show the comfort, and upper management didn't like that at that time. And so I
Oh
called it a shoe
no.
cam. I mean, you know, it made sense to me, but what the hell? And we only had one viewer anyway,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
show was called Eye on Style, and we nicknamed it to Eye on Edna because she was our
She was the
only
one
viewer.
watch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but it was fun to do.
I love it. Oh.
Good times, good times.
Well, and again, that's why I want to stress. We're not talking about the closing of HSN. It is going to continue. It's just it's going to be in a
Yes.
different place and a different location. So, and by the way, because people have been asking me like I'm some expert, what's going to happen to the hosts? Are the hosts moving? It's too early to speculate anything like that. It is just it's
Right.
it's going to play out over time. I will say this: I texted one of the hosts the day the news broke, and I just said, "What's the attitude like there?" And this person just said a lot of tears because
Yeah.
it is a family. And you can speak
Hmm.
to that better than anyone else. I mean, it's what I remember Skip Connolly telling me, and Karen had told me as well. The Don Cesar, somewhere near there, used to be a popular hangout for a lot of the people at
Oh, sure,
Hurricanes.
sure.
That's the name of the place I was trying to think of. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
so people really did become friends and family there.
No question, and that continues to this day. I mean, you know, you go in, you're seeing a face that you're used to seeing, and that's so important for morale and so important for because people want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And you don't want anything that's cold and you know, non-inviting. You want something, you want a great environment, and that's what they have. And I mean, my heart goes out to all the people there It was a decision. I'm sure it was not an easy decision.
Of
No
course.
question about that.
Yeah.
I was not privy to it. I don't know anything about it. I have nothing to do with it. But had to be a tough decision to make because there are a lot of people that have spent years and years
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's true. I mean, we don't know how it's going to evolve, what the process is going to be. But there's something definite in life, and it's called change.
Yeah.
And I even said in the post that I made, like it or not, we all live in the future.
Yeah.
And it's been said, you want to predict the future, you want to predict your future, create it.
Yeah.
So embrace it, go out, make it happen.
Great words. Great words. And I hope everybody takes those to heart. Real quick, what's going on in Bob Circosta's world these days? What are you working on?
I'm having a great time. I'm just so fortunate and so blessed in my life. And it's been a great run. I've enjoyed it immensely. I'm on the golf course 3-4 days a week,
Yeah.
which I thoroughly love.
Yeah.
And I go on. I think I have 5 or 6 different products that I do on the air, and I just thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, it's still, if it wasn't fun, I would not continue doing it.
Right.
And it's still fun. It's still enjoyable. As far as the future, I don't know yet. I haven't made any decisions. Do I fly up there? Some people have said, are you going to move up there? And I said, well, let me think about this. 9 degrees or 90?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me get back to you.
Yeah, you're not golfing on February 5th in Pennsylvania. No.
But I may go up periodically here and there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very blessed. I'm not getting any younger, that's
Right.
for sure. But there's a time for everything in our lives, and maybe it's time for the last bargain for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we'll just see what happens, and that's why. And you read my post that I put up, and
Yeah.
you commented, which I appreciate you doing. And I knew I had to say something, and it just, my heart just said, you've got to say something. And I had no idea. I wrestled with it once they announced the move. I wrestled with what I was going to say, and believe it or not, Sean, this is the truth. I woke up at 4:20 in the morning. And I remember looking at the clock, 4:20 in the morning, and I sat in front of the computer, and everything just flowed out, and that post that I put up, that so many people have liked, which I appreciate deeply, uh, that went unedited. That was the first and only run, and I just put it up. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on LinkedIn. It just kind of sums up all those years, the little highlights that happened along the way, all the way from, doing 24-hour bargathons, being on the air for 24 straight hours and cutting the price, and, playing the games, and all that, from announcing on the air the tragedy of the space shuttle when it exploded. And then being on the air, I'll never forget this, when we launched missiles on Baghdad, when we went to war, and I was on the air when they actually launched the missiles. So it really is something. And I read that post back, and I'd like everybody to read it if you really want to understand the progression, not the mechanics of it, not the hardcore, but really the human element of what has gone on all these years.
Bob, I can't thank you enough for taking time to share your thoughts with everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Sean, always for you, my good friend. You just call and I'll be there. You know it.
Appreciate it so much. Bob Circosta. I thank Bob for his time. It's been fantastic going down memory lane. And I want to thank all of you for subscribing. If you've not subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Please leave 5-star ratings. I love those as well. But subscribe so you don't miss a show and you can listen to the archive of past shows. Find me on social media under my name, Sean Wilsey. Instagram, the only one where it's just S. Wilsey. That's all you have to look for. Thank you for downloading this edition of our Week on the Air.
Yes, I know, Travis. That's why we give such bargains.
Copyright 2025, King Bobby Productions, all rights reserved.